Standing, I was 31 years old, broke, and out of excuses. Not broke in the way people say it casually, the way they say it at dinner and laugh. I mean genuinely broke. Behind on every bill. Behind on every promise I had made to myself. Standing in a life that looked nothing like the one I had imagined when I was 22, with fire in my chest and certainty in my eyes. And here is what I remember most clearly about that moment. It was not the embarrassment. It was not even the fear. It was the particular, suffocating weight of watching other men I had grown up with, gone to school with, started alongside, pulling ahead, building things, owning things, becoming things. While I stood still, maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you are living it right now. You work hard. Nobody can say you don't work hard, but hard work alone has not been enough. And somewhere in the back of your mind, maybe at 2 in the morning, maybe in the quiet moment before your alarm goes off, a question rises that you don't quite want to answer. Have I already missed my window? I want to speak to you today with everything I have learned in the years since that morning. Because what I discovered, what a wise man named Earl Shoaff showed me when I was at my lowest, changed not just my bank account. It's changed the entire architecture of how I saw time, effort, and what it means to be a man building a life. Stay with me, because what I am about to share is not comfort. It is not flattery, being free. It is something far more valuable than either of those things. It is the truth. Let me tell you about the 4 seasons, not the ones on a calendar, but the ones inside a life. There is a spring, a time of planting. There is a summer, a time of tending and protecting what you have planted. There is an autumn, a time of harvest, when everything you have worked for comes back to you multiplied. And there is a winter, the cold, the difficulty, the setback, that tests whether you have built something real or only something that looks real in good weather. Now here is what most men in their 30s do not understand, and it is the most important thing I can tell you today. You are not in autumn. You have not missed the harvest. You are standing at the beginning of spring. I know that is hard to believe when you look around and see men your age who appear to be harvesting already. They have the house, they have the business, they have the confidence of a man who has been building for years. And you wonder, did I miss spring? Did I miss sleep through it? Here is what I want you to understand. Not every man plants on the same day. The earth does not care what day you arrive at the field. The earth only asks one question: did you plant? A seed put in the ground in late spring will still grow. It will grow with urgency. It will grow with a kind of focused intensity that an early planted seed never develops, because an early planted seed has the luxury of time. The late planted seed has none. It must move. And here is the distinction I need you to carry with you for the rest of this conversation. There is a profound difference between being behind and being early. Being behind means you have already lost. Being early means you have not yet begun. And the beginning is still entirely available to you. Then the man who is behind sits in his chair and mourns what he did not do. The man who is early stands up, picks up his tools, and walks to the field. Same age, same morning. Entirely different destiny. Which man are you going to be? That is not a rhetorical question. I want you to answer it right now in your own mind before we go any further. Ending, because everything I am about to share with you only works for one of those 2 men. Yielding here is the first great distinction I want to draw for you today. And I want you to hear it carefully, because most men spend their entire working lives never understanding the difference. There is earning and there is building. Earning is what happens when you show up do the work, and receive payment for your time. It is necessary. It is honorable. A man who earns honestly is a man of dignity. But earning alone, no matter how hard you work, no matter how many hours you put in, will never make you free. Because the moment you stop showing up, the earning stops. You have traded your time for money, and when the time is gone, the money is gone with it. Building is something else entirely. Building is what happens when you take a portion of what you earn and direct it towards something that will grow without your constant presence. A skill that compounds. A business that serves while you sleep. An investment that multiplies quietly in the background while you are doing everything else. I learned this distinction the hard way. For years, I worked hard. Nobody worked harder. I was at the job early and I stayed late. And at the end of every month, I had almost nothing to show for it because I was earning, only earning. I had no plan for building. The man who taught me this asked me a simple question. Then he said, if you stopped working today, not by choice, but by necessity, how long could you survive? I did not like my answer. Most men in their 30s are earning. Some are earning quite well, but they have not yet begun building. And there is a difference between a high income and wealth would stagger most people if they truly understood it. Here is the formula I want you to write down on paper, with a pen, so your hand has to slow down and your mind has to follow. Take 10% of everything you earn and direct it towards something that grows, a skill, a small investment. A side enterprise you tend for 1 hour every evening. The amount matters far less than the habit, because the habit compounded over 5 years, over 10 years. That is what builds a life. That is what separates the man who is comfortable from the man who is free. You are in your 30s. You have time enough, but only if you start building today, not next month, not when things settle down. Today. Now let me address something that I know is true about you, because it was true about me, and it is true about nearly every man I have ever met who felt behind. You are busy. Genuinely, exhaustingly, relentlessly busy. Your calendar is full. Your phone never stops. You fall into bed at night tired, truly tired. And yet somehow, when you look at the scoreboard of your life at the end of the week, you cannot quite point to the thing that moved forward. The thing that mattered. That is not a time problem. That is a productivity problem. And there is a world of difference between the two. Business is motion without direction. Productivity is motion towards something. And here is the brutal truth that I had to learn before anything in my life could change. It is easy to be busy. It requires no discipline, no clarity, no courage. The world will fill your hours for you if you let it. Other people's emergencies, other people's requests, in the 1,000 small distractions that feel urgent in the moment and mean nothing in the year, the world will hand you a full schedule every single day, and none of it will be yours. And the productivity requires that you ask a question first. What is the one thing, the single most important thing, that if I did it today would move my life forward? And not the most pressing thing. Not the thing someone else wants from you. The one thing that serves your design. I used to measure my days by how tired I was at the end of them. If I was exhausted, I told myself I had worked hard, and I had. But tired is not the same as productive. A man can dig a ditch all day and be exhausted. He can also spend that same day building a foundation. Both men are tired. Only one of them has something to show for it. Here is the discipline I want you to build. Ending every morning, before the phone, before the news, before the noise of the day begins, take 10 minutes and ask yourself, what are the 3 things that, if completed today, would mean this day was not wasted? And write them down. Do those 3 things first. Everything else is secondary. This sounds simple. It is simple. And that is exactly why most men never do it. Because it is easy to do, and it is easy not to do. And the men who choose easy in the morning are the men who wonder 10 years later where the time went. Be honest with yourself right now. Are your days busy, or are they productive? Drop a comment below and tell me the honest answer, because the first step to changing it is admitting which one you have been living. Here is a distinction that I believe is the single greatest trap for intelligent men. Men who read, men who study, men who have spent years gathering wisdom. There is a difference between knowing and doing. And I say this with deep affection, because I have been this man. I have sat in the chair with the book in my lap and felt the satisfaction of understanding something, truly understanding it, and told myself that the understanding itself was progress. It is not. Knowledge is the map. Action is the journey. And a man who studies, maps his entire life, and never leaves the house has not traveled. He has only imagined traveling. I have met men who could quote every great philosopher, every successful businessman, every wise teacher who ever lived. They could articulate the principles of success with precision and eloquence. And yet their lives, their actual, daily lived lives, looked nothing like those principles, because they had made the fatal error of believing that understanding a thing was the same as doing a thing. It is not. It is not even close. Here is what I want you to understand about why this happens, because it does not happen from laziness. Most men who fall into this trap are not lazy. They are afraid. Knowing feels safe. Knowing feels like progress without risk. As long as you are still learning, still preparing, still getting ready, you cannot fail, because you have not truly tried yet. And the mind, which is clever and self-protective, will keep finding new things to learn, new preparations to make, new reasons why the timing is not quite right. But here is the law that governs this. Every day you spend preparing to live is a day you did not live. The antidote is not to stop learning. Never stop learning, but take what you learn and apply it within 24 hours. Read a chapter and then do one thing that chapter suggested. Hear a principle, and then find one place in your life where you can practice it today. Not next week. Not when you finish the book. Today. Because the men who are pulling ahead of you right now are not smarter than you. They are not more talented than you. They simply moved before they were ready. And moving before you are ready is not recklessness. It is courage. It is the only way anything ever gets built. Now we arrive at the distinction that, in my experience, separates the men who change from the men who stay the same for the rest of their lives. The difference between wishing and deciding. I want you to think about the things you want, the business you have thought about starting, the body you have thought about building, the financial position you have thought about reaching, the version of yourself you have thought about becoming. How long have you been thinking about those things? A year? 5 years? Longer? Here is the question I need you to sit with. Have you been wishing for those things, or have you decided to have them? Because wishing and deciding feel similar from the inside. They both involve thinking about what you want. They both involve a certain emotional engagement with the future, but they produce entirely different results. And the difference is not subtle. Wishing is passive. Wishing says, I would like this to happen. Wishing keeps the door open for it not to happen. And that open door, that small, quiet reservation, is enough to prevent almost any real change from taking root. Deciding is something else entirely. Deciding is an act of will. Deciding says, this is what I am going to do, and I am going to arrange my entire life around making it happen. And deciding closes the door on the alternative. Not dramatically, not loudly, but firmly. I made a decision at 31, not a wish, not a hope, a decision. I decided that I was going to learn everything I could about why some people succeeded and others did not. I decided I was going to apply what I learned. I decided I was going to become a different man, not someday, but starting that week. And everything changed. Not immediately, not dramatically, but the direction changed. And in the long run, direction is everything. Here is the discipline of deciding. Write down the one thing you are going to commit to. Not explore, not consider, not try. Commit to. Write it as a declaration, not a question. Not what I want to build a business. Write, I am building a business. Present tense. Active, already in motion. And that shift in language is not cosmetic. It is the beginning of a new identity. An identity, who you believe yourself to be, is the foundation of everything else. If this is speaking to you right now, if this is the message you needed to hear today, make sure you subscribe right here, because every week we go deeper into these principles. And what I am about to share next is the part of this message that most men never hear. I want to talk to you about winter, not the season of cold and bare trees, though that is the image I want you to hold in your mind. I want to talk about the winters of a man's life, the periods of difficulty, of setback, of loss, of failure, the seasons when nothing seems to grow no matter what you plant. You have had winters, I know, and if you are in your 30s and you feel behind, there is a good chance that one of those winters is part of the reason. A business that failed, a relationship that ended, a health crisis, a financial collapse, a decision that cost you years. Here is what I learned about winter, and it is one of the most important things I will say to you today. Winter does not come to destroy you. Winter comes to teach you. The farmer does not curse the winter. The farmer prepares for the winter. He stores, he plans, he tends to the tools he will need when spring returns. And when spring does return, as it always does, he is ready. He has not wasted the winter in despair. He has used it. The man who loses a business at 32 and spends the next 3 years in bitterness has wasted his winter. The man who loses that same business sits quietly with what went wrong, learns the lesson the failure was trying to teach him, and rebuilds. That man has used his winter. And when his spring comes, he plants the wisdom he could not have had without the loss. I want you to hear this clearly. The winters of your life are not evidence that you are behind. They are evidence that you have been tested. And a man who has been tested and is still standing, still striving, that is still willing to walk back to the field, that man has something that a man who has never faced winter cannot buy at any price. He has resilience. He has wisdom born of actual experience, not theory. He has the kind of character that only difficulty can forge. So do not resent your winters. Do not spend one more day mourning the time they took from you. And instead ask the question the winter is trying to answer. What did I need to learn that I could not have learned any other way? And then answer that question honestly. And your winter becomes the most valuable education you have ever received. We have covered the seasons of a life, the difference between earning and building, between business and productivity, between knowing and doing, between wishing and deciding. And we have talked about what winter is truly for. But here is what I want you to understand. Everything I have shared so far is the foundation. What comes next is the architecture, the specific practical distinctions that will determine whether this message changes your life or simply becomes another video you watched and forgot. If this message is speaking to you, if somewhere in these words you are hearing the thing you have needed to hear for months, perhaps for years, then I want you to subscribe right here, because this is what we do every single week. We go deep. We go honest. We do not trade in flattery or empty promises. We trade in truth. And the truth applied is the only thing that has ever changed anyone's life. The next part of this message is the one most men never reach. Stay with me. Let me tell you about the most powerful force in the universe. It is not talent. It is not intelligence. It is not even hard work, though hard work is essential. It is the compound effect of small daily disciplines. Here is what I mean. A man who does one push-up today has not built a strong body. A man who reads one page today has not built a vast education. A man who saves $1 today has not built financial security. These things are true. But here is the other truth. The one that changes everything. The man who does one push-up today, and one tomorrow, and one the next day, and then two, and then 50. That man, in 3 years, has a body that turns heads. The man who reads one page a day will read 36 books in a year. Then the man who saves $1 a day will, through the discipline of that habit, eventually save 100, and then 1,000, and then 10,000. The numbers are not the point. The habit is the point. Because here is what I have observed in 40 years of studying success and failure. The difference between the man who succeeds and the man who fails is rarely a single dramatic decision. It is the accumulation of thousands of small decisions, each one seemingly insignificant, each one easy to skip, each one adding or subtracting from the compound total of a life. Easy to do, easy not to do. That is the formula. Every small discipline is easy to do. Go for a walk this morning, easy. Read for 20 minutes tonight, easy. Write down your 3 priorities before the day begins, easy. Call the person who can help you move forward, easy. And every single one of those things is equally easy not to do. Vern, skip the walk, skip the reading, start the day without a plan, put off the call. Easy, comfortable, and quietly, invisibly devastating. The man who skips the small disciplines tells himself it doesn't matter. It was just one day. It was just one walk. It was just one phone call. And he is right. Once. But the habit of skipping compounds just as surely as the habit of doing. And 5 years from now, the man who did the small things every day and the man who skipped them will stand in lives so different from each other that they will barely recognize each other as having started from the same place. You are in your 30s. You have enough years ahead of you that the compound effect can work miracles. But it requires that you start today, not a dramatic overhaul, not a complete reinvention, one small discipline, then another, then another. That is how lives are built. I want to talk to you now about something that most men resist hearing because it touches something personal, something that feels disloyal to even consider. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, not approximately, not loosely. The average. Your income, your ambition, your habits, your beliefs about what is possible, all of it is shaped daily by the people whose voices fill your hours. Now, I am not asking you to abandon your friends. I am not telling you to be cold or calculating or to treat relationships as transactions. That is not wisdom. That is poverty of character. But I am asking you to be honest about this. Are the people closest to you building, or are they settling? Are they asking hard questions of themselves, or are they comfortable with easy answers? Do they challenge you, gently, lovingly, but genuinely, to become more? Or do they quietly validate the version of you that never quite gets started? Because here is what I know. If you spend your evenings with men who complain about their circumstances and do nothing to change them, you will slowly, without noticing, begin to believe that circumstances are the reason. If you spend your time with men who are building, who are reading, who are asking hard questions and doing hard things, you will slowly, without noticing, begin to believe that you can do the same. The environment you choose is not a luxury. It is a strategy. And here is the practical question I want you to ask yourself this week. Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with? Write their names down. Then honestly ask, if I become the average of these 5 people, am I happy with who that average produces? If the answer is yes, excellent. Protect those relationships. Invest in them. They are among your greatest assets. If the answer is no, or even not quite it, then you have a responsibility not to cut people off harshly, but to deliberately, intentionally seek out 1 or 2 new voices, a mentor, even if only through books, and a community of men who are building what you want to build. A single relationship with someone who is 5 years ahead of you on the path you want to walk. One new voice in your life can change the trajectory of the next decade. I know this because that is exactly what happened to me. One man, one conversation, an entirely different life. Do not underestimate the power of who you let speak into your hours. Standing here is a question I want you to sit with. And I want you to be genuinely honest with yourself before you answer it. In the last 30 days, how much time have you spent in working on your AE job versus how much time have you spent working on yourself? Most men, if they are honest, will find a ratio that troubles them. 8, 10, 12 hours a day on the job. Perhaps 30 minutes, perhaps none at all, on their own development, their own reading, their own thinking, their own design. And I understand why. The job is urgent. The job pays the bills. The job has a boss, a deadline, a consequence for neglect. Whereas working on yourself, reading, reflecting, developing new skills, designing your life, has no immediate consequence for neglect. You can skip it today and nothing happens. You can skip it tomorrow and nothing happens. You can skip it for a year and on the surface, nothing seems to have happened. But something has happened, something invisible and compounding and devastating. You have remained the same while the world around you has changed. You have maintained your current level of skill, knowledge, and perspective while the marketplace has continued to evolve. And the gap between where you are and where you could be has quietly widened. Here is the principle I want you to take from this. Your job makes you a living, but working on yourself makes you a life. You need both. You cannot neglect the job. I am not suggesting that. But if all your energy goes into the job and none goes into your own development, then you are building someone else's dream with the best hours of your day and leaving your own dream for the hours when you are too tired to build anything at all. 1 hour a day. That is all I am asking. 1 hour before the job or after it. That belongs entirely to your own growth. Read, think, write, plan. Study the skill that will make you more valuable. Study the philosophy that will make you wiser. Study the men who have built you want to build and learn from their paths. Aiding 1 hour a day is 365 hours a year. That is 9 full 40-hour work weeks invested in yourself. In 5 years, that is 45 work weeks. Then think about what a man could learn, build, and become with 45 weeks of focused self-investment. The answer is almost anything he decides to become. Let me teach you something that took me years to truly understand. Something that, once you grasp it, removes almost all of the sting from rejection, from failure, from the slow days when nothing seems to be working. It is called the law of averages. Here is how it works. If I knock on 10 doors and 2 of them open, I have a ratio, 2 in 10. And here is the beautiful truth about that ratio. If I knock on 100 doors, 20 will open. If I knock on 1,000 doors, 200 will open. The ratio holds. Most men stop at the closed doors. They knock 3 times, hear silence, and conclude that doors do not open. They walk away and spend the rest of their lives telling people that they tried. But trying is not the same as at applying the law of averages. Trying implies a limited number of attempts. The law of averages requires a firm commitment to volume, a willingness to keep knocking until the ratio delivers its inevitable result. Now, here is where this becomes directly relevant to you right now in your 30s. You have knocked on some doors and they have stayed closed. I know this. You have tried things that did not work. You have invested effort that did not return what you expected. And somewhere in the accumulation of those closed doors, a voice began to suggest that perhaps the doors were not meant to open for you. That voice is lying to you. The closed doors were not failures. They were part of the ratio. Every door that stayed closed narrowed the distance to the door that will open. The law of averages does not care about your feelings. It does not care about your discouragement. It only responds to your persistence. So here is the discipline. Do not count your failures. Uncount your attempts. And when the ratio feels discouraging, do not reduce your effort. Increase it. Because the law of averages guarantees that the man who keeps knocking will eventually stand in a room full of open doors. Persistence is not stubbornness. Persistence is the intelligent application of a mathematical law, and the man who understands this law is not discouraged by rejection. He is energized by it, and because every no brings him measurably, mathematically closer to the yes that changes everything. If you have made it this far, I want you to know something. Most people do not. Most people consume the first few minutes of a message and move on. The fact that you are still here, still listening, still engaging, tells me something important about you. It tells me you are serious, and serious men deserve serious resources. I'll subscribe right here, because what I am about to share in the final section of this message is the most important thing I have said today. It is the principle that ties everything together. And it is the one that most men, even men who have studied these ideas for years, have never fully applied. Do not leave before you hear it. We have arrived at the heart of everything. This is the teaching I want you to carry out of this conversation and into the rest of your life. Not as a consolation, not as a comfort for the difficult years you have been through, but as a genuine, practical, life-altering truth. The man who starts late must simply run twice as fast. I want you to hear what that means and what it does not mean. It does not mean you must panic. It does not mean you must sacrifice everything you value in a frantic attempt to close a gap. It does not mean that the years you have lived were wasted, or that you are somehow diminished by arriving at the field later than others. What it means is this: the man who starts late has something the early starter does not have. He has urgency. And urgency, genuine, bone-deep urgency, is one of the rarest and most powerful forces in human achievement. Comfortable men do not have it. Men who started at 22 with family, money, and an easy path, they do not have it. They have time, and time without urgency produces leisure, not greatness. The man who is 34 and feels behind, if he channels that feeling correctly, then if he transforms it from despair into fuel, has a fire that the comfortable man cannot manufacture at any price. I have watched this happen. I have seen men who started at 35 build more in 10 years than men who started at 22 built in 20. Not because they were more talented, not because they were luckier, but because they ran twice as fast. Because every morning they woke with the knowledge that they could not afford the luxury of a wasted day. That knowledge, that urgency made them sharper, more focused, more decisive, more willing to do the uncomfortable thing without hesitation. Your feeling of being behind is not your enemy. It is your engine. The question is not whether you have the fire. The ending, you have it. I can hear it in the fact that you are here listening to this, asking these questions. The question is whether you will use it, whether you will let it drive you forward or let it burn you from the inside. Use it every morning. Feel the urgency. Let it sharpen your focus. Ending. Let it make you decisive when other men are still deliberating. Let it make you persistent when other men have gone home. Let it make you the kind of man who 10 years from now will look back at this moment, this exact moment, as the turning point, because that is what this moment can be, if you decide that it is. Ending, I want to close with something I have said in many different ways over many years, because I believe it is the most important sentence in the vocabulary of a man who wants to change his life. You must make a living, but you must also design a life. Most men make a living. They work, they earn, they provide. And that is honorable. I mean that sincerely. But somewhere in the years of making a living, they forget to design the life. They forget to ask the larger questions. Oh, what do I want my life to look like in 10 years? What kind of man do I want to be? What do I want to have built? What do I want to have given? What do I want to have become? These are not soft questions. These are the most practical questions a man can ask. Because without answers to these questions, you will work hard every day and arrive at 60 at a destination you never chose. So here is what I want you to do before this day is over. Not tomorrow. Today. Find a quiet place. Take a piece of paper, not your phone, paper, and write down the answers to 3 questions. First, what do I want my life to look like in 5 years? Not what you think is realistic, what you actually want. Be specific. Write the income. Write the relationships. Write the health. Write the contribution. Second, what is the single most important thing I am not currently doing that would move me toward that life? One thing. The most important one. Third, and what will I do tomorrow? Specifically, concretely, at a specific time. To begin, that is the design. 3 questions. 1 page. 30 minutes of honest thought. Most men will not do this. And I say that not with contempt, but with sadness. Because the 30 minutes that stands between a man and a designed life is so small, so genuinely, laughably small, compared to the years of drift that follow from not taking it. Be the man who takes the 30 minutes. You are not behind. You are standing at the beginning of your planting season with urgency in your chest and wisdom in your years that you did not have at 22. The field is in front of you. The seeds are in your hands. Plant them today, and remember this. Carry it with you. Write it somewhere. You will see it every morning. Once that the man who starts late must simply run twice as fast. And that fire, that urgency, that is not a disadvantage. That is the gift to now go. Build the life you designed. If this message reached something in you today, if it named something you have been carrying, leave a comment below and tell me where you are in your journey. Ending, tell me the one thing you are committing to starting today. I read every one, and I want to know that this message did what it was meant to do. Share this with a man in his 30s who needs to hear it. Not because you want to send him a video, but because you want to send him a lifeline. You came here feeling behind. Ending, you leave knowing you are early if you plant now. Thanks for watching, The end screen has more messages in the same world. Pick the one that calls to you. Ending of an end. Thanks for being here. Pick whichever video on the end screen calls to you.